In 1986, downtown Cleveland saw the release of nearly 1.5 million balloons. What was intended as a dazzling charity fundraiser and a way to rebrand the city quickly turned into a tragedy. The event was called Balloonfest, Cleveland's attempt to shake off its rough reputation and prove it could stand out as a world-class city. You see, at the time, they had a pretty rough reputation, which was exemplified by its well-known nickname. City leaders wanted to prove that Cleveland wasn't a mistake. The previous year, Disneyland had claimed the Guinness World Record for the biggest simultaneous balloon launch.
They're colorful, they're fun, and lately they're very popular in major releases at celebrations and memorials. But what's not so fun when they come down and get into our Great Lake and even our wildlife.
And for some reason, the city leaders thought that outdoing Disneyland was the perfect way to start cleaning up Cleveland's image. Determined to outdo them, the United Way of Cleveland spent 6 months planning an even bigger launch. They built a net covering an entire city block and enlisted thousands of volunteers to fill the balloons. Finally, on September 27, 1986, the big day arrived. But not far away, on Lake Erie, a much different story was unfolding. The night before, a powerful storm had swept through the area. Just before it hit, 2 men had gone out fishing. The next morning, their boat was discovered empty, and the Coast Guard launched a search and rescue operation. Meanwhile, in Cleveland's public square, over 100,000 people had gathered to witness the balloon launch. The organizers were pleased that last night's storm had cleared in time for the event to go forward. But as the day wore on, the weather once again took a turn for the worse. A major rainstorm was closing in, but the balloons were already filled and ready to go. Rescheduling at this point would be near impossible, so instead, they released the balloons ahead of schedule. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here they go. Make a big liftoff. And the fans. There was no doubt about it. The launch was spectacular.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is no mistake on the lake anymore. Cleveland has now broken the Guinness Book of World Records and released over 1,500,000 balloons.
It was a tremendous moment of triumph for the city of Cleveland. But unfortunately, this moment of triumph did not last long. The expectation was that the helium-filled balloons would float around for a while before eventually deflating and returning to Earth one by one. But that wasn't what happened. Cold air and rain forced the still inflated balloons back down towards the ground. The result was mass chaos. Balloons, 1.5 million of them, caused quite a stir in Cleveland yesterday. A northerly wind quickly carried the balloons to Burke Lakefront Airport, and within minutes, the runways were so clogged that all flights had to be suspended. The balloons also started to descend on certain streets, and after a number of car accidents, these roads had to be closed until a bulldozer arrived to clear out the balloons. As all this was going on, the Coast Guard was still out looking for the 2 missing fishermen. Ironically, that big balloon launch in Cleveland today is one of the things that's making this search so tough for the Coast Guard.
Coast Guard. Can you imagine trying to find somebody floating out here or even spotting a life jacket with all these balloons on the water?
Balloons had descended on Lake Erie in massive quantities. 60% of the balloons launched landed here instead of the planned 10%. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack here. Can you imagine trying to find somebody floating out here or even spotting a life jacket with all these balloons on the water? On September 29th, 2 days after the balloons were launched, the Coast Guard finally called off the search for the 2 missing fishermen. And shortly after, both men's bodies washed ashore. Balloonfest was featured in the 1988 edition of the Guinness Book of World Records. However, that was the only edition to include it. And shortly after, Guinness ended the category of balloon launching altogether.